Welcome back, Cubers, to another Chill MTG, and man, we have opened a sweet pack here. Ancestral Recall, love to see it. The other blue cards in the pack, Time Warp and Treachery, pretty strong. I do not expect those to wheel. So considering what's going on in this pack, I expect potentially either the Dimir Signet or Ravenous Chupacabra to wheel. And of note, there are really no good white cards in this pack either. Karmic Guide is not your normal white pickup. So lack of white cards with a potential black wheel for the Dimir Signet and Ravenous Chupacabra is what I'm kind of thinking about before we snap up this Ancestral Recall. Pack 2, considering what was in the first pack, I'm immediately considering Dark Confidant or Shipwreck Marsh. There's also a Monastery Mentor. But looking at this pack, Ancestral Recall and Monastery Mentor kind of go hand in hand, but then so do Dark Confidant and Ancestral Recall. I'm leaning towards picking up the Monastery Mentor here because there were no white cards in the first pack, and so if I take the Monastery Mentor here, there's really no white cards being passed to our left in this second pack, and we can be cutting off white as a signal to our left. So I'm going to pick up the Mentor. Third pack, in terms of black, white, or blue cards, Muldrifter, Shriekmaw, Hero, and Cathar. Hero is definitely the strongest white card in this pack. Also lingering around here is Duretti, and if you've watched any of my other videos, you know I'm a sucker for Duretti. So definitely considering the Hero, the Duretti, and the Muldrifter. Now, Muldrifter will not trigger Monastery Mentor because it's a creature spell. I think I may hedge a little bit here, just considering the stronger black cards that we've been passing. I may hedge towards this Duretti. I don't know if it's right. It's hard for me to pass Duretti, so we're going to pick it up. And then bam, fourth pack, Fractured Identity. 100% taking that card. We have Monastery Mentor and Ancestral Recall, so we're definitely in white-blue probably. Fractured Identity is so strong, you just simply cannot pass it. I've seen people double splash for this, and that's not necessarily wrong. The card is just that good. All four of our cards are really strong right now, and I'm happy with the direction we're going. Not in any green, and we are considering a black or red splash for this Duretti. Here's an Elite Spellbinder, and that's kind of just where we want to be. Other consideration is Phantasmal Image and Intrepid Adversary. Portent, not strong enough yet for a fifth pick, so I'm leaning towards the Elite Spellbinder. When you play white cards, you want to play something that disrupts your opponent, and Elite Spellbinder fits nicely there. Starting to see black dry up a little bit, and there's no red cards in this pack. So the splash for Duretti is going down a little bit in value. Again, Duretti was a hedge pick. All right, Dismember is definitely my favorite card in this pack. There's a couple red cards, no black cards, and there was a Silver Blade, but we'll 100% pick up the Dismember. Works very well with the Monastery Mentor. All right, here's a Gideon and a Mother of Runes. This is actually a pretty close pick. 4-mana Planeswalker Gideon's quite strong, but then so is Mother of Runes as well. Mother of Runes is also a little bit lower on the curve, and so right now I'm really just considering a nice kind of low-to-the-ground white deck, splashing Ancestral Recall and Fractured Identity. Yeah, and the Duretti gets moved a little bit over to the right. So very surprising to see Time Warp wheel here. We'll pick this up. It's double blue pips, so depending on how our fixing goes, we may be able to play this. Then also making it around is a Cave of the Frost Dragon, Shipwreck March, and Chart of Course. I'll pick up the Chart of Course. Here's a Cathar Commando fitting into our lower to the ground white strategy, a sword for the sideboard, and we are rounding out pack 1. Hey, an Intrepid Adversary. That's a nice wheel. Makes me feel pretty confident about our direction here in white. We'll definitely move Duretti to the sideboard, not looking at black or red at this time. And we're solidifying ourselves into Azorious. Wow, Silverblade on the wheel as well. Definitely snap that up. Okay, pack 2. All right, power again. Yes. Off color, but we'll take it. Just having Moxen really enables you to get ahead of your opponent. Also in this pack, we have Urza Saga, Balance, Spell Pierce, and a Steam Vents. Not in red, so I'm hoping either the Balance or the Urza Saga comes around. Oh, okay. Palace Jailer versus Tundra. I love me some Palace Jailer. We did have a lot of white cards wheel, but we need to take the Tundra here to enable our Fractured Identity and Ancestral Recall. So definitely eat your vegetables. Take the lands to make your mana good. Okay, we open up a Teferi and a Remand and a Skyclave Apparition. Skyclave is really strong, but I'm thinking now that I've seen so many white cards wheel, I wonder if we can take the Remand and wheel the Apparition. Let's hope so. One of the things that can really put these kind of white decks over the edge and really level them up is to have some disruption, whether it's white disruption or blue disruption. That's why I picked up the Remand there. And here's a Ponder. This is a great draw spell. This is probably going to take the place of Chart a Course. It's just so much better. Selfless Spirit, Faith's Fetters, and a Signet which is off color. It'll just be the Selfless Spirit here, utility creature that's evasive. Godless Shrine, Dark Slick Shores. Not happy to really be seeing these lands have black. It's not super helpful. We'll take a Faithbound Judge, but that card's just not great. We'll just kind of cut white a little bit more. Really hoping for that Apparition to wheel. Okay, Recruiter, Narset, and Deserted Beach. We just need to take the Deserted Beach there to keep our mana as good as possible. Would really love a white or a blue fetch. All right, Cemetery Protector, not really where we're looking to be. Probably just filler, hoping to cut that. Don't necessarily need it in the main deck. There's a Palace Jailer on the wheel. Very nice. And the Apparition wheeled. Yes, all right, it worked out. That always feels nice when you can kind of read the table a little bit. All right, rounding out pack 2. I would rather play Gideon here over Student of Warfare. I'm not a huge fan of Student. And a Faith's Fetters, and let's get to pack 3. All right, the best card in this pack for us is Relic Warder. There's also a Daze. Considering we had a Palace Jailer and Apparition wheel, we're going to take the Daze and hope to wheel that Relic Warder as well. Daze is a broken card. Okay. Brainstorm, Baral. We don't have Baral doesn't really help a whole lot with our spells. So I think it's just a Brainstorm here for more card selection. Then there's a Path to Exile. Oh, and there's a white fetch. So Path versus the white fetch. I kind of snap up the Path, though the white fetch may have been right there to be able to make our mana better. And then here we have a Jace and a Force of Negation and a Thraben. So I've pretty much figured out that we can pass white cards and they will table. So the pick is between Jace versus Force of Negation. I think I have enough blue cards to make Force good enough, so let's pick that one up. And then there's a Smuggler's Copter and a Seachrome Coast. I didn't pick up the fetch, so I think we need to take the Seachrome Coast to make our mana a little bit better. I'll definitely pick up a Wasteland here. It may be tough on the mana, but I think we may be able to get there. And then here is a Celestial Colonnade versus Elspeth Knight Errant. I did pass one 4-mana Planeswalker. I'm counting the cards up here. Definitely not going to get something great to wheel. There's only 9 cards left. So we'll pick up the 4-mana Planeswalker. Thalia, I'm not a huge fan of necessarily. And there's an Azorious Signet. I'm not sure if either one of these will make the deck. I'm not really needing to ramp up to 4 or 5 mana with the Signet. And the Thalia hurts us probably as much as it's going to hurt an opponent with our blue cards. We'll pick up the Signet. There's the relic order from the first pack that we knew would table. Elspeth Conquers Death versus Oust. Oust is a little bit easier to cast. Could possibly help trigger the Monastery Mentor. There's an Usher. Not a fan of Usher of the Fallen. It'll probably be an easy cut. There's the Thraben Inspector that I knew would wheel. And our deck is coming together here as we round out pack 3. Okay, here's where we ended up with our deck. 16 lands plus the Mox. All base white creatures, no blue creatures, but with some great blue interaction and some powerful spells with Fractured Identity and Elspeth Knight Errant at the top end. Excited to get in the games. Let's go into match 1. All right, welcome to match 1. We are on the play, and we will keep this hand on the power of Ponder. Definitely lead off with Kythian so we can get some power on the board, and then hope to draw some decent hits with Ponder. Opponents on black-red, we draw a second Plains, and let's Ponder. Force a Negation, Silver Blade, and a Plains. Potentially, we could put the Silver Blade on top and then Soul Bond our Kythian next turn. So we won't have Force a Negation up because we have no other blue cards in hand. I don't know if this is strong enough. I think it is. We'll try to do it this way. We'll get in there for 2 and then we'll plan to Soul Bond next turn. All right, opponent cracks a Marsh Flats, fetching up a Scrubland. So a little Mardu for the opponent. All right, looks like our opponent just passes. We know what we're drawing, so we'll plan to... Oh, all right, on our upkeep, our opponent Lightning Bolts Kythian. That's unfortunate. So we know we're drawing a Silver Blade and then a Plains after that. Probably a lot of removal running around in our opponent's deck. All right, yep, and there's some more Banishing Light on our Silver Blade. We'll hold up Force and Negation for any plays from our opponent. Jite, yeah, that one's going to get countered. All right, that was an awesome draw. Elspeth off the top. We're going to be able to make bodies and just get a bunch of value here. Mox Diamond from the opponent, pitching a Mountain. And a Mind Twist for 2. Joke's on you, opponent. I had all lands in hand. And there's another land. Yeah, let's see if we can get some damage in here with this Elspeth. I'm going to hold this land just because there's no sense to play it, I don't think. Actually, because it enters tapped, let's go ahead and play it. All right, our opponent just passes to us, and we draw another land. I'm going to make a 1/1 body this time just to kind of diversify our threats. All right, opponent, any plays this turn? All right, opponent casts Necromancy, targeting our Kythian. Interesting. Looks like that's it for now. Path to Exile's the draw. Yeah, I think we're just going to plus on our tokens here and try to just get in for some more damage. Now, they can make Kythian indestructible, so I'll just get in with the flyer. Four mana Planeswalker here showing her value. Always love it when you see your opponent play library on turn 8. Means they drew it. All right, big spell from our opponent here. Banefire for 6 on Elspeth just to reduce loyalty. Wow. And they don't have a good attack because they can't make Kythian indestructible. We will block if they attack. Yeah, I don't think that was a great turn for our opponent. They were worried about... And then we draw Fractured Identity. All right, so we can either Fractured Identity the Banishing Light and then get our own Banishing Light and then get Kythian off the board while getting our Silverblade Paladin back. Or we could just Fracture Identity the Kythian. Fractured Identity, just a broken card. So we'll just take the Kythian. It's a little more conservative this way. And then we'll get in there for 5, putting our opponent down to 2. All right, Glory Bringers, good play from our opponent, but we are going to Path to Exile that before it gets an attack trigger. Oh, wait. Glory Bringer into Balance. Interesting. So, I can't let Balance resolve because our opponent has no cards in hand. So we have to use the Path to Exile now, unfortunately, which means we'll lose all 3 of our creatures. But we do still have an Elspeth in play, so we'll be able to continue making 1/1s. Interesting play by the opponent there. Now we're both top decking, but we have the active Planeswalker on board. And we will 100% just slam Mom here. All right. Off to sideboarding. So Mardu from our opponent. We could bring in the sword for the pro black. Yeah, I do like Gideon a little bit better as it's more protected from sorcery speed removal. All right, I like this, adding Gideon. All right, game 2 on the draw. This seems like a very nice hand. We can lead on Island to hold up Daze, and we have Remand and Mentor and Exile. Yeah, this is great. OP leads on a Scrubland. And we'll lead on an Island. Second dual land from our opponent. There's Ponder a turn late. Let's actually just get Intrepid Adversary on the board. The 3/1 body is going to require an answer. And we still have Daze up because Daze is a broken card. Opponent's mana looking really good over there. They cast Lingering Souls. Yeah, that's pretty good against the 3/1 body, so I don't want this to resolve. So let's go ahead and Daze this. I actually had to look up some rules because my plan is to remand the Lingering Souls from flashback next turn. And I wanted to see if I remanded a flashback card, if it goes to my opponent's hand or what happens. And it turns out any card that is flashbacked, if it would go anywhere else, it's basically exiled once you flash it back. So my plan is for the Lingering Souls to be flashed back next turn. We're going to remand it, and it's not going to go to our opponent's hand. It's going to go into exile, which is good. So holding up remand here. There's the flashback of the Lingering Souls. So we'll remand, and the Lingering Souls goes to exile. Nice, just as we drew it up. All right, we could play Mentor here, but I actually want to get Mom on the battlefield. First, we'll Ponder. I don't like this, too many lands, so let's shuffle and draw a fresh one. A Relic Order, nice. We'll get Mom down because then, so next turn when we play Mentor, we'll be able to protect the Mentor with Mom. This also allows us to hold up Path to Exile this turn. Piece of Power from our opponent. All right, Balance. It's pretty good. They're going to have to sack 2 lands, but that clears our board, and we're going to have to discard 2 cards. So we'll obviously plan to just discard our lands, sack all of our creatures. Ugh, feels bad. Our opponent's got a floating black mana. Mind Twist. Oh, man. That was pretty good. We just went from 5 cards in hand to no cards in hand drawing off the top. And we drew a land. And our board was wiped, and our opponent basically just had to sack 2 lands. That was a pretty well navigated turn to make that happen. All right, our opponent plays a Lily. Pretty good. And then ticks up. We've drawn land. All right. Showdown of the Scalds for our opponent. Vindicate, Ragavan, and Urza's Saga. Yeah, they'll be able to play the Saga. All right, Tundra. All right, 3 lands off the top. It's not looking good for the home team here. We're not dead yet, but I expect our opponent to start making some constructs. Tick up again from the Lily. All right, there's a construct from our opponent. And then I expect them to play the Ragavan. All right, they play it with Dash, which makes sense. Because that'll make a treasure, which will pump the construct. And they exiled a Plains off the top of our library. Thank you for that, opponent. And then the Ragavan will just go back to their hand, which is pretty good. Oh, all right. Fractured Identity. We could fracture the Showdown, or we could fracture the Lily. I don't want to fracture the Construct token, just because it would just be a 1/1 on our side of the board. So the Lily is interesting because we have some good creatures in our graveyard. What I'd like to do is fracture the Lily and then down tick on the Lily to put Leon and Relic Order back in our hand and then cast the Relic Order, but we're a mana short from doing that. At least from playing the Relic Order. Because then the Relic Order would eat the Construct token and that would be awesome. And that Construct token's going to be at least a 6/6 next turn, as long as our opponent makes a Construct, which means even if I uptick on Lily on the Construct, Lily's still just gonna die. So if we take the Lily, the only option we have is to downtick and put another card back in our hand. I almost think I should take the Showdown here just to get 4 fresh cards. But I also don't want my opponent to have a Lily that's getting closer to ultimate. This is a tough one. All right, fracture the Lily. And then we're going to downtick. And I think I just want to put the Relic Order back in hand. Because we're going to lose the Lily, but we'll at least be able to handle one of the Construct tokens. And unfortunately, we won't be able to play it this turn to protect our Lily, so we'll have to pass the turn. So our opponent does make a second construct, and then they fetch up a Mox Diamond. All right, they dash out Ragavan again, triggering the Scalds, putting another +1/+1 counter on a construct, and they're going to be able to get in here for 8. So they are attacking us, which kind of makes sense because that is the only way to trigger Ragavan. But at least we will keep the Lily around. They exile a Thraben. Oh, that was a pretty good hit. That's going to make another artifact for the construct tokens and triggers Showdown again. These constructs are kind of out of control. We need to draw another removal spell for the second construct token. We draw a Deserted Beach. Okay. Yeah, we needed like a Palace Jailer, I think, to get out of this a little bit. Because then we could Palace Jailer a construct and Relic Order a construct, but we did not draw that. So we're just going to be able to Relic Order one of the constructs. And then hope we can draw something good next turn. At the end of our turn, the opponent fetches just to thin their deck a little bit. So here, if they go to attack the Lily, I will chump with the Relic Order just because I'd like to downtick Lily again to get another creature back from the graveyard. Uh-oh. Oh, Inferno Titan? Yeah, that's good enough. Let's probably just go to a game 3. All right. Let's double check the sideboard here. Let's take out the Brainstorm, and I want to find a way to try to just put more pressure on our opponent. One of the reasons we lost that game is because we just didn't pressure out enough. I'm not a huge fan of Adeline, but I can help pressure the opposing planeswalkers or the opponent's life total a little bit with her. All right, we will go first. And the Mox is nice. We don't have a turn 1 play, but we can keep this hand. We'll have a turn 3 Elspeth. We're also holding up Wasteland for our opponent's mana. So we'll lead on the Seachrome Coast and pass the turn. Okay. Our opponent leads on a Mox Diamond, pitching a Plains, and then a Mox Emerald. Pretty good. They haven't played a land yet. Okay, they're just playing Ragavan instead of dashing. Interesting. I probably would have dashed Ragavan there just to get a treasure token because they didn't play a land, which tells me that they don't have a land in hand. Definitely should have dashed Ragavan there. We're going to Relic Order the Mox Diamond, and now they're off of their primary colors of mana. We'll play our own Mox Emerald, and we'll be able to play Elspeth next turn, or if they play any sort of non-basic land, I'm going to Wasteland it. All right, yep, see, they didn't, they should have dashed their Ragavan. I feel a little bad for the opponent there. We'll be able to play our Deserted Beach, and then we'll be able to play our Elspeth. Just going to make a 1/1, and I'm not going to offer the trade quite yet. I want to probably Soul Bond the Relic Order with Silverblade Paladin in our hand, so we'll just hang back for right now. Oh, and the poor opponent just doesn't hit another land drop. We will 100% snap block this. Okay, they did find a land, a red land. Interesting. I should probably be playing around balance somehow. So I think we need to Elite Spellbinder here and just see what's going on in our opponent's hand. Okay, so they do have balance in their hand. A Lightning Strike, a Lingering Souls, and a Showdown. Balance is the most dangerous. If they hit a Plains, that'll clear our board. They will have to discard a lot, but so I'm gonna just tax the balance here, and then we're gonna try to get in for as much damage as we possibly can. So Plains off the top, and our opponent is likely going to cast Lingering Souls. Okay, Inspiring Vantage does it. Lingering Souls is what they want because it's going to block our board really well. At least they don't have black mana right now to flash it back. Luckily for us, we have a Silver Blade in hand, which is going to be able to give us a double strike. Intrepid Adversary was also a really great draw. So we want to finish this game quickly. One more mana and our opponent will be able to balance. Take up on the Elspeth. We will wasteland their Inspiring Vantage so they do not have white mana. And then the question is Adversary or Paladin. I think I want to get the Paladin down and give something double strike. Probably the Relic Order. And then we can get in with the Spellbinder and the Relic Order and just hang back with the Selfless Spirit. And that's a cool 10 damage if they choose not to block. Okay, so they block just the Spellbinder and take 4 from the Soul Bonded Relic Order. Really happy we had Wasteland there. Oh no, they drew a black mana, so now they can flash back their Lingering Souls. Yeah, and they're back up to 3 blockers. It's okay. I think we can still just fight through this. Fractured Identity is a pretty good card. We can't play it yet. But so we can +3/+3 from our Elspeth again on the Spellbinder again, so it can attack cleanly. We can also play our Adversary with a counter, which is going to pump our whole team. We'll be able to get in with everything except for the Selfless Spirit. They still are 1 mana away from casting Balance, 1 planes exactly. So if they just chump with all 3 spirits here and draw planes, then it's not too bad for them. Because of that, I think I'm going to get in with the Selfless Spirit as well. I just need to maximize damage. Yep. So all their creatures will die. If they get a planes off the top, I mean, we'll still have an Elspeth, but that'll be a really good turn. I mean, that'll be a clutch top deck for them. Oh, they draw Bloodstained Mire. Do they have a white source they can fetch? Yep, Scrubland. All right. So here comes Balance. Our opponent is going to have to discard 2 cards, but they don't sacrifice any lands, and we have to sack our whole board. We will be able to plus up with the Elspeth next turn. And we do have 1 more mana away from having Fractured Identity. All right. Good play, opponent. Good play. Palace Jailer was an interesting draw. And I think I'm going to play it just because it's going to allow us to draw out cards now. We drew a Mom off the Monarch. So our opponent's holding an Elspeth Conquers Death. Okay. Whew. That was a close one. I think we squeaked in there. All right, on to match 2. All right, we're in match 2, game 1, and we are on the draw. 1 land hand, but we have Ancestral Recall, Thraben Inspector, Kithian, all as 1-drops. I think we keep this hand on the back of Ancestral Recall. Could be risky, but Ancestral Recall is insane. We're also on the draw, so hopefully we draw another land. Our opponent portents themselves. And I think I'm going to want to lead on Kithian just to get the most power on the board. All right, we draw an Intrepid Adversary, not a land, but that's okay. We got 1-drops. Dimir from our opponent. And they kill Kithian. Okay. Remand, also not a land. All right, I think we need to recall here to try to hit a land. And we hit a colorless land. Okay, not the greatest. Not the greatest. And now we're going to have to pitch a card. I think we pitch one of our 3 drops just because we have so much action going on. And we have 2 non-creature spells in our hand. So we could pitch Mentor. Since they're playing black, we may, it's a pretty juicy target. So I'm just going to pitch Mentor just because I'm going to want to curve out to a 3-drop next turn, which is not going to trigger Mentor. And then we could get the Elspeth online on turn 4, but we'd have to go running lands to do that. So I just don't think it's realistic that we're going to get a lot of immediate value out of this Mentor. So while Mentor is a good card, I think that's the discard here. And it looks like our opponent just passes the turn back to us. Happy to see that. Yes, land off the top is what we needed. So we can play Inspector and hold up Remand, or we could play Spellbinder and see what's going on in our opponent's hand. I kind of want to just play Inspector, hold up Remand, and if they don't do anything, we can draw off of our clue token at the end of their turn. And this doesn't really show our opponent that we're holding up Remand because they could just think that we're holding up 2 mana for our clue token, which is why I like this play. And if no plays from our opponent, I'm happy to draw it. Noticing also that they missed their land drop. So drawing Daze is probably going to be pretty powerful against them. And okay, so we got all our counter magic. Let's play Elite Spellbinder, see what's going on in their hand, and then we'll have Daze held up. Daze, such an unfair card. All right, so they have Deluge, Cruise, Ritual. So we can counter the Deluge with the Force of Negation. The most problematic card here for us is probably either Tasigur, because it just is a 4/5 body, or Glenalendra. But since we have a flyer, we can get over Tasigur. So actually, I think Glenalendra is probably the biggest problem, as I have no way to deal with it if it's on the board. So let's tax Glenalendra and pass the turn. Yep, as expected, our opponent Toxic Deluges for 3 exactly, and we can just kind of blow them out with just a Daze here. Sorry, opponent. Daze is not a fair card. And then we'll be able to untap. And we draw a White Source, which turns on our Silverblade Paladin. Since the Toxic Deluge is out of their hand, we'll be able to still hold up Force of Negation for our opponent's non-creature spells. Let's get Silverblade Paladin on the battlefield. This represents a lot of damage, so we can swing in for 7 this turn. And then we're still holding up Force of Negation. Their Thieving Skydiver in their hand doesn't do anything. They can play Tasigur, which would hit the battlefield, but we have a soul-bonded Elite Spellbinder, which can fly right over. Our opponent really needs to wipe the board, but they just, I don't see how they do that here when we have Force of Negation up. Okay, they try to control magic. Yeah, that's just not going to work. We'll pitch the Remand, and that should be game as we have lethal on board. Yep, our opponent counts it up, and let's go to sideboarding. Okay, so we're against blue-black control. I kind of like Gideon just because it's going to be harder for them to deal with as a planeswalker that is sometimes a creature. Honestly, we could just run it back. But let's get Gideon in, and we'll just kind of... Dismember is okay. Let's just get Flicker Wisp out. It's hit or miss. All right, going into game 2. So a lot of 4 lands and 3 1-mana spells. I think we keep this one just on the back of Thraben Inspector. Thraben Inspector is so good. We will lead on Mom just to make sure we have her ability online as soon as possible, since she has Summoning Sickness. All right, they don't kill Mom, which is good. Now Mom can protect herself and other creatures. We draw a Selfless Spirit. Let's play the Selfless Spirit. It's the most mana efficient play this turn. And a 2/1 flying evasive body is probably going to be decent against this opponent. All right, they play Ashiok. Ashiok is kind of going down for me in terms of how good it is in the cube. It just doesn't impact the board, right? Not like an Oko 3-mana Planeswalker. Ashiok doesn't impact the board at turn it comes down. It doesn't protect itself either. Yeah, it's a little frustrating having your cards exiled. We draw another land. But it just, you need your Planeswalkers to be doing something when they hit the battlefield. Granted, if your opponent has no answers for Ashiok, it can kind of take over the game. But that's really hoping that your opponent has nothing. So Ashiok's going down for me. I do run Ashiok in my own personal cube, but I think I'm going to replace it with one of the new Planeswalkers spoiled in Kamigawa. All right, Ashiok hits 3 lands, and then this turn they hit our Ancestral Recall and a Brainstorm. It's a little unfortunate. I am glad they kind of took 3 lands off our top of our library last turn, so that was nice. And we'll just probably draw with our Clue token here in a turn unless they play something that's a must kill that we need to get with the Dismember. Mind Twist for 3. Yeah, okay. We have 3 lands in hand. Maybe they'll hit 3 lands. Joke's on you, opponent. My hand wasn't very good. And we'll draw. I was considering drawing before the Mind Twist resolved, but we'll just wait for the Mind Twist to resolve, and then we'll draw our card. They did hit our Dismember, which is a little unfortunate, but hopefully we can draw in some more action. All right, Force Negation's not the worst draw as we can cast it. And then Daze, okay. So we'll be able to attack the Ashiok here and get Ashiok down to 2 loyalty. And we'll pass the turn with Daze and Force Negation backup. So far what Ashiok has done is Ashiok has prevented 5 damage to our opponent. Toxic Deluge for 2. Yeah, that's not going to resolve opponent. Sorry. Oh, sweet. We draw an Intrepid Adversary. All right, we'll be able to pump the Adversary once, and we'll be able to get this Ashiok off the board right now. So total combined, it looks like this Ashiok is going to have saved our opponent 10 life. If that's worth it, I'm not sure. And we'll pass the turn holding up Daze. All right, opponent's got 6 mana. They can do something crazy. Treasure Cruise. Exiling everything. Oh, man, what a beating. Here comes Daze, the most unfair card. What a tempo play. They sunk 6 mana their whole turn, exiling 2 cards, and I just had to return an island to my hand. That's got to be super frustrating for the opponent. Yeah, that's a concession from the opponent. That was just backbreaking. All right, we win match 2, on to the next one. Hey, all right, welcome to match 3, game 1. We are on the play. Looking at this hand, 2 3-drops. We do have all of our mana. We do have a Wasteland, so we could mulligan, we could keep. We'll keep this hand, see how it turns out. Probably lead on either an island or the deserted beach and see what our opponent's up to. I like to lead on just basic land if you can, just to play around Wasteland from your opponent. Bop comes down for the opponent, so probably not going to get to Wasteland them this game, and then we draw an Elite Spellbinder. So we're on mono 3-drops right now. So we'll have some bangers of turns coming up, but we can't interact with our opponent at this time. And they play a Fastbound. Little scary. And a Jace comes down. Okay, so, and they play a Lumbering Falls. So, I want to take care of the Jace. That's just going to be too much card selection. Our opponent has 2 cards in hand, so they may not have a lot more going on. Let's get the Skyclave Apparition down and take the Jace off the battlefield. All right, opponent plays a Sword of Body and Mind. This is why I don't like playing swords in the main deck, because their sword doesn't give protection. Well, I mean, it gives protection from blue, but I don't have any blue creatures out. We're mostly all white creatures. So we're going to be able to block that Birds of Paradise pretty easily. Let's get our Elite Spellbinder down as a blocker since the Birds has flying. And we'll just tax this Trinket Mage out of our opponent's hand. Now, this is definitely a misplay. I have Monastery Mentor in my hand and we play a Mox Emerald. There's no reason to play the Mox Emerald right now. I should have saved that to do a single prowess trigger on the Mentor. If our opponent attacks, I'm going to snap block here because we don't want to enable any shenanigans they got going on, nor lose the top 10 cards of our library. Post-combat, our opponent plays a Birthing Pod. Kind of scary, but they have no creatures on the battlefield. And there's a Daze 1 turn too late to counter the Birthing Pod. Oh well. We'll play the Monastery Mentor and we'll get in there with the Skyclave. And this way we'll be able to hold up Daze as well. I do give my opponent props for playing Birthing Pod in Vintage Cube. That's some spicy brews, so well done, OP. All right, no plays by our opponent, and we draw a land. Day's not looking great, but they do only have 4 lands on the battlefield, so we'll get in there for 4, and we're holding our opponent to a decent clock here. If we can enable 1 prowess trigger, we have them on a 2-turn clock. All right, they play Eternal Witness. The only thing they can get back would be a land or a Birds of Paradise. But what I really don't want them to do is to then Birthing Pod flip this Eternal Witness into a 4-drop. So I'm going to Daze this, even though they can pay for it, just to turn off Birthing Pod this turn. This will also trigger our Monastery Mentor. All right, and our opponent scoops, so we'll go to sideboarding. So we're up against Birthing Pod. I don't have really any my Artifact Hate is already in the deck with Leon in Relic Order. We could consider Faith Fetters to turn off the Birthing Pod. I just don't know if that's good enough. Our opponent's also playing green, so Sword of Feast and Famine is also a consideration. I'm just thinking, so I also consider Oust, just because if they Birthing Pod something out, I could just return that bigger creature to their hand, and then they're kind of out the value of their Birthing Pod. So I think we'll take out Flicker Wisp. It could stay, it could go. Kind of just trying to build room here. And with the card draw we have, I'm considering removing Brainstorm, since we do have no fetches. So we'll take the Brainstorm out and go into game 2. All right, game 2, we're on the draw, and we have a lot of blue cards in all our counter magic, but we have Ancestral Recall to kind of help us draw into some more action threats for the board, so we're going to keep this hand. Our opponent leads on a Dream Root Cascade. We draw an Elite Spellbinder, so we'll play an island so we can hold up Daze. All right, our opponent casts a Lonis. Trying to consider if this is worth dazing. I don't really think it is. It's not that impactful. So we'll let it resolve and save Daze for a future play. Wasteland, right on time. I'm okay with kind of just time walking here a little bit, even though our opponent did play a Lonis. We can just play the Wasteland, take out their blue source, and maybe keep them off some blue mana. So I think that's the line. Okay, so they did have another blue source in hand, and they have a Birds of Paradise. Now we could Daze the Birds of Paradise as well and just keep them off of the mana acceleration, though that will set us back 2 lands, essentially, because we Wasteland and Now we're going to have to return this, so we'll have no lands on the battlefield to our opponent's 2 lands. Not sure if that was the right call. Let me know what you think in the comments. All right, 4th land, Seachrome Coast. We'll probably play that one out. With the Force of Negation in our hand, I'm happy to hold on to the remand, but I think what I should do here is play the Ancestral Recall on our opponent's turn just to dig into some more action, because we have nothing going on until 2 turns from now where we can play an Elite Spellbinder. All right, our opponent's on full Sultai here, and they play a Spellseeker. Can't interact with it. Let's see what they dig up. A Blood Chief's Thirst. Okay. Could be worse. Skyclave Apparition off the top. That's a good draw. But again, we don't have any other acceleration. A Mox would be sweet right here. So we'll just have to pass the turn. We have Remand and Force of Negation up. Our opponent gets in there, and in their second main, they cast, looks like Birthing Pod. Yep, Birthing Pod. So we can remand this, or we could pitch remand and play Force of Negation. I think the correct line is to actually Force of Negation this, and then we're just done with it. But I do play the remand here. I think this is a misplay. We can just deal with it permanently. The reason I play Remand here is because I know I can tax the Birthing Pod with the Elite Spellbinder next turn. But now our Force of Negation is substantially less good because our only other blue card in hand is the Ancestral Recall. And that would be a lot of card disadvantage to pitch the Ancestral Recall. All right, we end up drawing a Path to Exile off the Remand and then an Elspeth. So we got some good action going on. Let's get the Elite Spellbinder down and tax, see what they got going on, and likely tax their Birthing Pod. So they got Birthing Pod, Blood Chief's Thirst, and Reanimate. So now I'm kind of kicking myself for not using Force of Negation to counter the Birthing Pod permanently. Here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking I want to tax the Blood Chief's Thirst just to make it inconvenient to cast. And then we're going to have to hold the Force of Negation for the Birthing Pod, pitching the Ancestral Recall. It's not a great line, but I think I have to do it this way just because I kind of made that mistake last turn by not using the Force of Negation from the get-go. Had we used the Force of Negation, we'd be taxing the Blood Chief's Thirst now anyways, but we would also have an Ancestral Recall in our hand to cast next turn to draw some more action. So bad play, chill. Let's see if we can dig ourselves out of it. So we exile the Blood Chief's Thirst. So their Blood Chief's Thirst effectively costs 3 or 5 mana now. So this next turn, I expect our opponent to play Birthing Pod, and we're just going to have to pitch the Force to deal with it. I'm sorry, we're going to have to use the Force and pitch the Ancestral Recall to deal with it. Yep, here's a Birthing Pod, and here's Chill feeling really bad about pitching an Ancestral Recall for Force of Negation. It feels like a 4-for-1 against us. But the problematic Birthing Pod is now exiled. And our opponent's just left with the Reanimate in hand, so with no good targets. All right, we draw a Dismember, which is a good draw. And our options here are to play Elspeth or Skyclave Apparition. If we play Skyclave Apparition, we can hold up Dismember. Elspeth represents the most damage, but Skyclave Apparition kind of just takes options away from our opponent. So we'll Skyclave, exile the Cryptologist, and get in there for 3 in the air. Of note, our opponent has taken 5 damage from their own fetch land and them attempting to cast Birthing Pod twice. So that's good. Oh no. They play an Oko. Well, dang. Okay. I have no good way to interact with that right now. But since we have the flyers, I think we'll be able to play the Elspeth to give our Skyclave flying and +3/+3. And we'll likely be able to, hopefully we'll be able to take out the Oko next turn. All right, another land. Just fine. That'll allow us to play Elspeth and hold up either Dismember or Path. So as planned, let's play the Elspeth. We'll plus on our Skyclave and then attack our opponent with the Elite Spellbinder and Oko with the Skyclave. And then we should be pretty far ahead. All right, go Spirit, go. Oh, okay. Our opponent Assassin's Trophies the Skyclave, which means Oko's going to live and they're going to get a 2/2. We'll search up a land, which is fine. This allows us to hold up both Path and Dismember. And we still get 3 damage in on our opponent, but the Oko is definitely a problem. Our opponent also has Reanimate available on our own Skyclave, which could take care of the Elspeth or the Elite Spellbinder. But it looks like our opponent is going to just try to attack Elspeth. So we can save Elspeth here. Let's just dismember the 3/3 and then continue to hold up Path. All right, their second main, they play a Biogenic Ooze. Definitely going to Path this. Unfortunately, we can't do anything in response to the trigger, but we can do it before their end step to ensure that their Ooze token is just a 2/2. So our next turn, we have some decisions to make. Let's see what we draw. We can plus on our Elspeth, but we won't be able to take to make our Elite Spellbinder a 6/4, but we won't be able to take out Oko. We draw a land. Cool. The other option is to make a 1/1, and then we can defend. We can kind of defend Elspeth. Remember, our opponent has a Bloodchief's Thirst in exile that they'll be able to cast next turn. I think the Oko is too far out of reach to deal with at 7 loyalty. Thanks, Oko. I think we would need to try to just play to some outs here and damage down our opponent. So the question is whether or not we make a 1/1 or we try to get in for 6 damage right now. Let's make a 1/1. That will allow us to defend our Elspeth with if our opponent attacks into her. That'll force our opponent to use Bloodchief's Thirst on the Elspeth, which will eat up their turn. They also have the food token, which they can gain life. I don't know. It's not looking great here. We need to draw something good, and we need our opponent to like not gain life. Okay, so our opponent elks their food, which means they can't sack it for life. They'll be able to attack down the Elspeth now if they want to. But they also are representing 7 damage on the battlefield plus the Lumbering Fall, so that's actually 10 damage. Luckily, we're at 11, and we have a blocker. Our opponent's still holding Reanimate, which they could get our own Skyclave out, but I think they're trying to figure out how to not die as well because they need to take care of the Elspeth, because the Elspeth can just win next turn if I have the Elite Spellbinder still on the battlefield. This is definitely a big turn, and you can see there's so many different ways our opponent could play this. That these decisions really matter. It's going to end up determining the game. Okay, so they Bloodchief's Thirst. Okay, so Elspeth's dead. They can't activate their Lumbering Falls. Let's see, and then they Alpha Strike in for 7 damage. I'm going to take it. I need to find a way to do 2 more points of damage. And then we can win. If I can't find a way to do 2 points of damage, we're going to lose. Fractured Identity. I think that'll do it. We can steal Oko and then elk our own soldier token. And then that'll be exactly 6. Play to your outs. I knew we were the beatdown. Just barely. That was a super lucky draw. Exact lethal. All right, that wins the match and that wins the league for a trophy. Awesome. Wow, what games. Really loved this white-blue deck with base white creatures and blue interaction. Daze and Fractured Identity are just broken cards. For Daze particularly, I love casting it, but I hate having it cast against me. This deck was fun to play, really fun to draft. Thanks for watching these games. Thanks for chilling out with me here, and I'll see you next time.